Okay. This record, though by no means perfect as I could wish, will serve to give a notion of a very curious interview, which was not only pleasing at the time, but had the agreeable and benignant effect of reconciling any animosity and sweetening any acidity, which is the various bustle of political contest had been produced in the minds of two men who, though widely different, had so many things in common: classical learning, modern literature, wit and humor, and ready repartee, that it would have been much to be regretted if they had been forever at a distance from each other. Mr. Burke gave me much credit for this successful negotiation, and pleasantly said that there was nothing to equal it in the whole history of the Corps Diplomatique. I attended Dr. Johnson's home, and had the satisfaction to hear him tell Mrs. Williams how much he had been pleased with Mr. Wilkes' company, and what an agreeable day he had passed. I talked a good deal to him of the celebrated Margaret Caroline Rudd, whom I had visited, induced by the fame of her talents, address, and irresistible power of fascination. To a lady who disapproved of any visiting her, or my visiting her, he said on a former occasion, "Nay, Madame, Boswell is in the right. I should have visited her myself, were not that they had now a trick of putting everything into the newspapers." This evening he exclaimed, "I envy him acquaintance with Mrs. Rudd." I mentioned a scheme which I had of making a tour to the Isle of Man and giving a full account of it, and that Mr. Burke had playfully suggested as a motto, "The proper study of mankind is man." Johnson said, "Sir, will you get more by the book than the jaunt will cost you? So you will have your diversion for nothing and add to your reputation." On the evening of the next day I took leave of him, being to set off for Scotland. I thanked Johnson with great warmth for all his kindness. "Sir," said he, "you are very welcome. Nobody repays it with more." How very false is the notion which has gone round the world of the rough and passionate and harsh manners of this great and good man. That he had occasional sallies of heat and temper, and that he was sometimes perhaps too easily provoked by absurdity and folly, and sometimes too desirous of triumph in colloquial contest, must be allowed. The quickness both of his perception and sensibility disposed him to sudden explosions of satire, to which his extraordinary readiness of wit was a strong and almost irresistible incitement. To adopt one of the finest images of Mr. Holmes Douglas, on each glance of thought, decision follows, as the thunderbolt pursues the flash. I admit that the beetle within him was often so eager to apply the lash that the judge had not time to consider the case with sufficient deliberation. I'm just remembering now that I think I had a nightmare, or a dream at least, or an anxiety dream about that Latin translation from last night. That whole Latin footnote debacle. Ugh. That he was occasionally remarkable for violence of temper may be granted, but let us ascertain the degree and not let it be supposed that he was in a perpetual rage, and never without a club in his hand, to knock down everyone who approached him. On the contrary, the truth is that by much the greatest part of his life he was civil, obliging, nay, polite, in the true sense of the word, so much so that many gentlemen who were long acquainted with him never received or even heard a strong expression from him. The following letters concerning an epitaph which he wrote for the monument of Dr. Goldsmith in Westminster Abbey afford at once a proof of his unaffected modesty, his carelessness as to his own writings, and of the great respect which he entertained for this taste and judgment of the excellent and eminent person to whom they are addressed, who you'll recall, this is me, he said a lot of shit about in the past. Kind of thought he was an idiot. But let's see what he says now that Dr. Goldsmith is dead. To Sir Joshua Reynolds. Dear sir, I have been kept away from you. I know not well how. And of these vexatious hindrances, I know not when there will be an end. I therefore send you the poor dear doctor's epitaph. Read it first yourself, and if you think then it right, show it to the club. I am, willing to be corrected. If you think anything much amiss, keep it to yourself till we come together. I have sent 2 copies, but prefer the card. The dates must be settled by Dr. Piercy. I am, sir, your most humble servant, May 16th, 1776, Sam Johnson. To the same, sir, Miss Reynolds has in mind to send the epitaph to Dr. Beatty. I am very willing, but having no copy, cannot immediately recollect it. She tells me you have lost it. Try to recollect and put down as much as you retain. You perhaps may have kept what I have dropped. The lines from which I am at the loss are something of rerum civilum sive naturalium. It was a sorry trick to lose it. Help me if you can. I am, sir, your most humble servant, June 22nd, 1776, Sam Johnson. The gout grows better, but slowly. So I guess Johnson had gout. Not a surprise. There's a footnote here about Latin, the Latin. These words must have been in the other copy. They are not in that which was preferred. It was, I think, after I had left London this year that the epitaph gave occasion to a remonstrance to the monarch of literature, for an account of which I am indebted to Sir William Forbes of Pitsligo. That my readers may have the subject more fully and clearly before them, I shall first insert the epitaph. Here it is. It's in Latin. I think, after yesterday, I'm not going to read it. But it says Olivere, Goldsmith, Poetae, Physicae, Historicae, etc. I'm just going to read the translation. Oliver Goldsmith, poet, naturalist, historian. So here they're translating Physicae as naturalist. And I've been thinking it meant doctor. I think it does mean doctor, though. Anyway. Who touched almost every kind of writing and touched none that he did not adorn. A powerful but kindly master of the emotions, whether he would move to tears or to laughter. Of genius lofty, lively, versatile, in style great, graceful, and charming. This monument to his memory has been raised by the love of his companions, the fidelity of his friends, the veneration of his readers. Quote, he was born in Pala in County Longford, 29th November 1731, educated at Dublin, and died in London, 4th April 1774. That's funny when he says that he was of genius, lofty, lively, in style great, graceful, and charming, when I feel like for hundreds of pages he was saying the opposite. Anyway, Sir William Forbes writes to me, Boswell, thus. I enclose the round robin. This jet d'esprit took its rise one day at dinner at our friend Sir Joshua Reynolds's. All the company present, except myself, were friends and acquaintances of Dr. Goldsmith. The epitaph written for him by Dr. Johnson became the subject of conversation, and various emendations were suggested, which it was agreed should be submitted to the doctor's consideration. But the question was who should have the courage to propose them to him. At last it was hinted that there could be no way so good as that of a round robin, as the sailors call it, which they make use of when they enter into a conspiracy, so as not to let it be known who puts his name first or last to the paper. This proposition was instantly assented to, and Dr. Barnard, Dean of Derry, now Bishop of Killaloe, drew up and addressed to Dr. Johnson on the occasion, replete with wit and humor, but which it was feared the doctor might think treated the subject with too much levity. Dr. Burke then proposed the address as it stands in the paper in writing, to which I have the honor to officiate as clerk. Sir Joshua agreed to carry it to Dr. Johnson, who received it with much good humor, long footnote here that I'll get to in a second, and desired Sir Joshua to tell the gentlemen that he would alter the epitaph in any manner they pleased as to the sense of it. But he would never consent to disgrace the walls of Westminster Abbey with an English inscription. Ugh. I consider this round robin as a special species of literary curiosity worth preserving, as it marks in a certain degree Dr. Johnson's character. My readers are presented with a faithful transcript of a paper, which I doubt not of their being desirous to see. Footnote, a reproduction of this document is here omitted. Well, now, here's a long footnote. This goes to Dr. Johnson received it with such good humor. Okay. Johnson, however, upon seeing Dr. Wharton's name to the suggestion that the epitaph should be in English, observed to Sir Joshua, I wonder that Joe Wharton, a scholar by profession, should be such a fool. He said, too, I should have thought Mund Burke would have had more sense. Mr. Langton, who was one of the company of Sir Joshua's, like a sturdy scholar, resolutely refused to sign the round robin. The epitaph is engraved upon Dr. Goldsmith's monument without any alteration. At another time, when somebody, possibly Reynolds, endeavored to argue in favor of it being in English, Johnson said, the language of the country of which a learned man was a native is not the language fit for his epitaph, which should be an ancient and permanent language. Consider, sir, how you would feel were you to find at Rotterdam an epitaph upon Erasmus in Dutch. For my own part, I think it would be best to have epitaphs written both in a learned language and in the language of the country, so that they might have the advantage of being more universally understood and at the same time be secured of classical stability. I cannot, however, but be of opinion that it is not sufficiently discriminative. Applying to Goldsmith equally the epithets of poetae, historici, physici is surely not right. For as to his claim to the last of those epithets, I have heard Johnson himself say, Goldsmith, sir, will give us a very fine book upon the subject, but if he can distinguish a cow from a horse, that, I believe, may be the extent of his knowledge of natural history. His book is indeed an excellent performance, though in some instances he appeared to have trusted too much to Buffon, who, with all his theoretical ingenuity and extraordinary eloquence, I suspect had little actual information in the science on which he wrote so admirably. For instance, he tells us that the cow sheds her horns every 2 years, a most palpable error, which Goldsmith had faithfully transferred into his book. It is wonderful that Buffon, who lived so much in the country at his noble seat, should have fallen into such a blunder. I suppose he was confounded the cow with the deer. So there you have it. For Johnson, only statute should only be in Latin. And I kind of agree with him in a weird way. It does look nice and fancy when they do that. All right. Sir William Forbes' observation is very just. The anecdote now related proves, in the strongest manner, the reverence and awe with which Johnson was regarded by some of the most eminent men in his time, more like fear, I think, in various departments, and even by such of them as lived most with him, while it also confirms what I have again and again incalculated, that he was by no means of that ferocious and irresistible character which has been ignorantly imagined, although it should be pointed out he didn't actually change his mind. This hasty composition is also to be remarked as one of 1,000 instances which evince the extraordinary promptitude of Mr. Burke, who, while he is equal to the greatest things, can adorn the least, can with equal facility embrace the vast and complicated speculations of politics or the ingenious topics of literary investigation. Besides this Latin epitaph, Johnson honored the memory of his friend Goldsmith with a short one on Greek. There's a footnote here. Sorry, not a footnote, another letter. Dr. Johnson to Mrs. Boswell. Madame, you must not think me uncivil in omitting to answer the letter with which you favored me some time ago. I imagine it to have been written without Mr. Boswell's knowledge, and therefore suppose the answer to require what I could not find a private conveyance. The difference with Lord Owen Clarke is now over, and since young Alexander has appeared, I hope no more difficulties will arise among you, for I sincerely wish you all happy. I should mention again, Lord Owen Clarke is, I believe, Boswell's father. And this has something to do with heritage, people, what do you call it? Bequeathing wills of estates to sons, I think. Are you all happy? Do not teach the young ones to dislike me as you dislike me yourself. But let me at least have Veronica's kindness, because she is my acquaintance. You will now have Mr. Boswell home. It is well that you have him. He has led a wild life. I have taken him to Lichfield, and he has followed Mr. Thrale to Bath. Pray take care of him and tame him. The only thing in which I have the honor to agree with you is in loving him. And while we are so much of a mind in a matter of so much importance, our other quarrels will, I hope, produce no great bitterness. I am, Madame, your most humble servant, May 16th, 1776, Sam Johnson. A little jealousy between Johnson and Mrs. Boswell. What a bromance, huh? Mr. Boswell to Dr. Johnson, Edinburgh, June 25th, 1776. Let's just make sure I didn't skip a page. Nope. Okay. You have formerly complained that my letters were too long. There is no danger of that complaint being made at present, for I find it difficult for me to write to you at all. There's a bracketed part here. Here an account of having been afflicted with a return of melancholy or bad spirits. The boxes of books which you sent to me are arrived, but I have not yet examined the contents. I send you Mr. McLaren's paper for the Negro who claims his freedom in the Court of Session. Footnote here about the box of books. Upon a settlement of our account of expenses on tour to the Hebrides, there was a balance due to me which Dr. Johnson chose to discharge by sending books. Okay. Dr. Johnson to Mr. Boswell. Dear sir, these black fits of which you complain perhaps hurt your memory as well as your imagination. When did I complain that your letters were too long? Footnote here from Boswell. Ferretti told me that Johnson complained of my writing very long letters to him when I was upon the continent, which was most certainly true, but it seemed my friend did not remember it. Sorry for the voice there, but he is being a little whiny there. Anyway, back to Johnson's letter. Your last letter, after a very long delay, brought very bad news. Bracketed part here. Here a series of reflection upon melancholy and what I could not help thinking strangely unreasonable in him, who had suffered so much from it himself, a good deal of severity and reproof as if it were owing to my own fault, or that I was perhaps affected it from a desire of distinction. I wish he included that part. That would have been good. Anyway, back to Johnson's letter. Read Cheyne's English Malady, but do not let him teach you a foolish notion that melancholy is a proof of acuteness. To hear that you have not opened your box of books is very offensive. The examination and arrangement of so many volumes might have afforded you an amusement very seasonable at present and useful for the whole of life. I am, I confess, very angry that you managed yourself so ill. I do not know now say any more than that I am, with great kindness and sincerity, dear sir, your humble servant, July 2nd, 1776, Sam Johnson. P.S. from Johnson, I think. It was last year determined by Lord Marsfield in the Court of King's Bench that a Negro cannot be taken out of the kingdom without his own consent. Oh, that's nice. All right, that's it for today. Till next time, trouble in paradise, huh? Till next time, bye from Boswell and stream.